Hey there, I'm Jerry, a DIY track guy, and today I'm at Toronto Motorsports Park for a really special and fun time with my buddy right here. Why don't you introduce yourself and your car?
Hey, my name's Terry. This is my Miata.
And right off the bat, Terry, I'm noticing something different in this area here. Can you tell us what that is?
Sure. So the chassis is a 1999 NV1 Miata. It's got a D-stroked LS7 in it.
LS7, and an LS7 is out of what car?
Came on the Z06 Corvette.
And this is very interesting because you are someone who didn't just buy this car with this swap already in. How did you achieve getting this thing in here?
So the motor, as you see it now, it's on its second motor. So originally I bought this car probably about 15 years ago. Got an LS1 out of a 2004 Pontiac GTO. And in my garage, I spent a year and a half figuring out how to get it in there.
Tell me, have you done this swap before?
Absolutely not.
In terms of doing swaps at all or mechanical experience prior to doing this?
So I came from Hondas. So I had a Honda Civic, and then I graduated to a Honda Prelude, 2001 Prelude. You know, I did brakes, rotors, suspension, and that's about it. But so when I decided to do this, I wanted to challenge myself and see if I can pull it off. It took a year and a half, but it came together.
It's like this took you a significant sacrifice to get this done, right?
Yes, yeah. So weekends when the wife and kids will allow, and a lot of times was after the kids went to bed at 9.
Wow.
I just get in there for a couple hours from 9 to 11 and kind of get as much work as I could.
That's amazing.
And then go to bed, go to work, and then do it again the next day.
I mentioned that it's a LS7 D-stroked motor. What does that mean?
So the LS7 is the largest bore block that GM makes. To D-stroke it, we use the 4.8 crank, so it's a smaller rotating assembly. And what that does is the center line from the connecting rods is not as steep of an angle, so it doesn't put as much side load on the cylinders. So it makes the engine a little bit more reliable. It revs a little bit higher.
Okay.
It's just easier on the motor in general for road course racing.
Now, this is still a street car, so the purpose wasn't solely to make a track-slaying monster, but you had kind of a different philosophy.
So this has always been a street car first. So it's got a full interior, and really it's more of a hot rod than kind of a track weapon. I would say it's kind of like a 75% street, 25% track. It's more of a very competent street car. The first motor that I built was the LS1, and when researching for parts at the time I didn't realize, so everyone said, this cam's great, it's got high lift, okay, just go buy it, right, order one. These dual springs are the best, just go get it and slap it in, right? Right. And what I didn't realize was a lot of that information was based on drag strip, kind of building up a drag strip motor, right? Yeah. So at the track, it's got a baffled oil pan. Yeah. But at the track at DDT, the motor got starved for oil. Yes. And it just blew a hole in the block.
It blew a hole in the block. Okay, so that was your unfortunate LS1.
Yeah, so when I rebuilt it, I talked to my builder, and the second time around, I didn't have time to do the build myself. So I just said, what would you recommend? He said, you know what would be awesome in this car would be a D-stroked, big block.
Yep.
And that's what we went for.
Can you help us understand how you built this in terms of all the parts that you assembled to make this thing happen?
Okay, so it starts off with an LS7 block. It's got the 4.8 crank that I mentioned earlier. It's got forged bottom end, so forged pistons and connecting rods, comp cams, conical springs, 11 30-seconds push rods, Brian Tooley Racing rocker shaft kit. With the trunnion upgrade. It's got an LS6 intake manifold. The heads are Texas Speed PRC 5.3 heads. I think they call it a stage 2.5.
Right.
So it's a little bit cobbled together, again, because we just reused a lot of the parts from the original LS1 build, right?
Okay. And you have had this car dynoed, so I'm sure we're all dying to know how much horsepower and torque did this beast make?
So it's a pretty conservative tune because we just want to make it super reliable for the track. So it makes 375 to the wheels.
375 to the wheels. When it comes to on track, using that 375 horsepower, how does it feel?
It feels pretty good. I mean, you got to feather the throttle on most parts of the track because it will kind of light them up in the back. But, for the most part, it's just trying to keep it reliable and the torque is instant. So it's anytime, anywhere.
Right.
So it's pretty good, yeah.
What kind of shocks, brakes, tires, rims, that kind of thing? What did you do to make this Miata sort of the fast track formula?
For shocks, I have Exita Gen 1 Exitas from 949 Racing. In terms of brakes, I got Willwood 4-piston radial mount front calipers. The rears are the Miata Sport rears. For pads, I'm running a Hawk DTC 60 front pads and Hawk ER1 rear pads.
Right.
Wheel and tire combo at this moment, they're on Hankook RS4s. They're about 3 years old, so they're kind of end of life, and they're 245 45/15s. Like I said, the car, I want it to be as stock as possible.
Right.
So no crazy splitter, no wings.
The number one question Miata guys will have for you is, didn't this motor and transmission, we didn't talk about your transmission yet, but doesn't that ruin the weight balance of this car?
You would think. That's kind of the misnomer out there. Like, you put in a big V8 and then suddenly it's front heavy, it doesn't handle. I mean, it is a little bit heavier. Overall weight, about 2,700 pounds without me in it.
Right.
But a lot of the weight is kind of in the transmission. And again, the motor itself is all aluminum. So the OEM motor that came out of the Mazda was iron block. So there was some offset there.
Yeah.
But it's got a T56 transmission, and a lot of the weight's kind of down low in the center.
And I noticed that you also run a few other things to make it reliable. So you got yourself a catch can there.
Correct.
And other oiling stuff. What do you got in terms of that?
So after I blew up the first motor, again, I started scouring the internet, and that's when I realized, there's a whole other part of the internet that talks about track prepped LS motors, right? And the big thing with those guys is oil control, valve chain stability. So I kind of went down that rabbit hole, and that's why we built this one the way it's built. And so to help with the oiling issues, I do have a 3-quart AccuSump in the rear.
And how does the AccuSump work, Terry?
So what happens is there's a pressure release solenoid. It's basically a valve. When the oil pressure drops, like say if I'm in a hard G load situation, oil's pumped up to the heads and hasn't had time to get down to the sump.
Yep.
It'll suck up a little bit of air, pressure will drop, the AccuSump will sense that, and it'll basically start dumping oil into the motor.
I saw you out there on track earlier. This thing looks like an absolute handful to drive. You were really sliding it around out there, and it was like crazy car control. So I just have one question for you. Can I drive it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Cool.
Here we go. First start of the LS Miata. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo. So what I'm going to do here is just take a few laps at a slow pace to try to get used to this transmission. See, that's 5th gear. Okay, and I'm going to brake here early, see if I can get it into 5th. At 3rd, that's 3rd. Yeah, the tires are very worn out. Oh yeah, that's got some grunt. Oh, that feels good. Really good brakes. Oh my gosh, the brakes are just amazing. Going in the right direction, use the power. Keep locking up the fronts. It just makes the straights feel so short. Yeah, just boom, you're there. Locking up the brakes there, locking up the tires. Man, the diff is really strange the way that it locks up. Oh man, the power. See if we can roll a little bit more speed through here. Oh, those front tires are just screaming. The car is requiring every ounce of brain cell that I have. Oh man, the steering feels so good. Very Miata-ish. That's funny. You know, off throttle, as soon as you take your foot off the gas, all of a sudden it feels like a Miata again. But on throttle, it feels like a dragon is trying to eat you.
So allow me to sum up a few thoughts about track driving Terry's V8 Miata hot rod. No surprise, the torque of that big ol' LS7 is absolutely intoxicating. And when you double the number of cylinders in a Miata, it's kind of hard to focus on anything else. It becomes this all-consuming characteristic that dominates the experience, but there's a lot more to unpack here. About that weight myth, yeah, you can for sure feel that extra 300 to 400 pounds, but what's interesting, I think, is the perception of weight from the V8's low RPM grunt and the higher effort of that T56 gearbox. It's a stark contrast to the rev-happy and rapid-fire nature of a stock Miata. And there's another contrast happening here. On the one hand, we have the LS Miata swap formula using V8 Roadster's subframes, mounts, and oil pan, among other things. And on the other, there's that fast track Miata formula with those high-end Zeta coilovers, flying Miata sway bars, wide 245 track tires, alignment, big brakes, and chassis bracing. It's taken him 15 years of iterative improvements to combine these two philosophies into this cohesive, sorted, and harmonious package. Now, he warned me that the tires were done, and I can confirm that they've lost all interest in providing meaningful adhesion. It's a lesson in braking just enough not to lock up, getting it pointed, and easing onto the throttle so it doesn't smoke the rears, all the while being ready for a buttload of opposite lock. It's an edge-of-your-seat thrill ride that tests your courage and your limits of car control. On fresh tires, Terry's clocked 118s around here, and I'm certain that with a set of stickier track tires like a Nankang CRS, it would really wake up the car from its current state. Of course, it'd be much faster, but more importantly, it'd have the grip to balance out that V8 power and the Miata's exceptional handling dynamics. All that said, here's the fastest lap I could manage on this occasion. so much for letting me drive your car. That was a blast.
Yeah, how'd you like it?
This car with this motor makes every other Miata look slow. It's just straight up.
So how was the handling? Did you feel, did you notice any difference compared to yours?
Yeah, you know, like the whole front heavy car that you'd expect it to be, kind of sluggish on turn-in, is not true at all. I think the problem that I had with your car is that the tires, as you said, were kind of cycled out. So front-end grip was pretty good on turn-in, but as soon as you go for that throttle, it kind of starts to understeer, and then it violently oversteers. I noticed some interesting dynamics coming from the rear end. We didn't talk about this earlier. What kind of diff do you have?
So I have a Ford 8.8 rear end diff with a 390 gear in it.
And what kind of diff is that? Is it like a Torsen?
It's like a clutch pack.
A clutch pack, okay. Yeah, that would feel, so in terms of why I was feeling something a little bit different back there is because I'm kind of used to that Torsen Miata progressive rear end slidey feel. So yeah, it was a little bit tough for me to get a handle on. And unfortunately, I'll put up my lap time right here. That is just about the same lap time I did in my own car. It's just about the handling dynamics of the car. Yeah, it felt a little bit heavier. I mean, 2,700 pounds is kind of heavy for a Miata. I mean, I think stock they are about 2,200 pounds or so.
Yep.
So yeah, it does feel like it's carrying a little bit more weight, but man, does it ever make up for it in power. What a blast it is to drive the car in terms of having two ends of the spectrum. So I got my Ecotec Miata over here on the kind of engine swap light side of the spectrum. You've gone totally on the other side to this is 100% serious. Good on you for building a car that can handle all the power that you put into it and put up with all the track duty that you put into it. Just one last question. What are your next plans for this car?
So next plans, I do have a new intake manifold. It's a 92mm fast intake manifold that I want to swap in probably over the winter. So that's sitting in my garage. Other than that, I mean, it's just general maintenance on it. You know, once I get the intake in it, I think I'll be happy. It'll be probably where the car will stay.
Thank you very much for letting me drive your car.
problem.
I know that it's a passion for you. It was a build. Actually, I learned this phrase from you: the thrill of the build. And
Absolutely.
to be very honest, I was always very envious of the passion that you put into building your car, and it was kind of the reason why I wanted to do an engine swap and chose the engine swap, the Ecotec, as my engine swap for my car. I think a lot of people in the Miata community or outside would say, oh, you're gonna engine swap a Miata? Put an LS into it. They don't understand the difficulty, how hard it is to make it happen. And not only that, once it's working, how hard it is to keep it working, especially doing track duty. So you have done an amazing job with this car.
Great, thanks, Jer.
All right, man. Well, thanks again. And for you guys out there who are in the Miata community, and if you have a cool car that you want me to review for some reason, feel free to contact me at mostlyuselessgarage@gmail.com. If you want me to drive it on the track, I'll gladly do that too. So I think that's a wrap. Until next time, you're awesome. I'm useless. Thanks for watching.